Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining today's live SBA web conference. Before we begin, please ensure you've opened WebEx participant and chat panels by using the associated icons located at the bottom of the screen. Please note that all audio connections are muted at this time. You are welcome to submit written questions during the presentation, and these will be addressed during Q&A. To submit a question, please select all panelists from the drop-down menu in the chat panel, enter your question in the message box, and press send. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. With that, I turn the conference over to Chris Eischen. Chris, please go ahead.
Thank you, Helen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 11th session of SBA's first Wednesday webinar series for fiscal year 2019. For today's session, we will be focusing on the all-small Mentor-Protege program, and by the end of the program, you should have a better understanding of this topic as well as the resources available to you. If you are new to our event, this is a webinar series that focuses on getting subject matter experts on specific small business topics, such as the all-small MPP, and having them provide you with valuable information you can use in the performance of your job. We appreciate you taking the time to participate in this FY19 program, and we hope that you benefit from today's session. Now for a little background on the First Wednesday program. The program was initially created for contracting staff, which is why the training is called 1102 First Wednesday. The 1102 designated government series for contracting personnel was later dropped to be more inclusive of other GS series as federal agencies increased the requirements for non-1102s to obtain DIWEA and FACC certifications. Additionally, other federal buying activities, SBA staff, PTAC, and SBDC personnel who, after hearing about the training, requested access and were added to the list of participants. So that is why SBA's First Wednesday program is aimed at federal government employees and our resource partners like PTACs and SBDCs. So thank you to those of you who are repeat attendees, and welcome to those of you who are new to the program. Slide 3, as Helen mentioned, I am Chris Eischen, and I work as a Procurement Center Representative, or PCR, in Kansas City, Missouri. Additionally, Ms. Gwen Davis, who is the PCR in Minneapolis, Minnesota, will be reading your questions submitted during the program for our speaker to address at the end of today's session. We both work in government contracting Area 4, and Slide 3 includes our information. On to Slide 4. Please note that all lines are on mute. However, you may submit questions or technical issues in the chat box on your screen. Your questions may be submitted anytime during today's session by entering them into the chat box, and these questions will be addressed at the end of our speaker's presentation. To make sure your question doesn't get overlooked, please ensure it is addressed to all panelists on the drop-down and not just to one individual. As most of you know, we have transitioned to WebEx and have been informed that some users may experience issues such as a blocked website or other error messages when attempting to access the conference login from their computer. If you are affected by this issue, please make sure you dial in and follow along with the slides provided in this email. We will ensure the page numbers are clearly stated so you can follow along. We're hopeful this issue will be resolved, and we apologize for any inconvenience. Now, if you are having any other technical issues, please call the AT&T support desk at the following number, 1-888-796-6118. This telephone number is also included in the email invitation for today's program and on Slide 4 of the PowerPoint presentation. So just keep listening in and follow along with the PowerPoint presentation. For more SBA Small Business Program training and additional resources, please visit the SBA Learning Center at www.sba.gov. On to Slide 5. Did you know that the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or APTAC, hosts a website where they post the First Wednesday programs? Since these sessions are being recorded, you can re-listen to this program as well as previous sessions by visiting their website, which is provided here on Slide 5. Additionally, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs, are a great resource in partnering with your local PTAC for an industry day, sharing RFI notices, or a source of sought announcement, or referring small business concerns to a PTAC are just a few reasons why they are such a useful resource for acquisition personnel. Please contact your local PTAC for additional information. Slide 6 is the program schedule for fiscal year 2019. and today's session on the All Small Mentor-Protege program is the 11th and final topic in the series for this fiscal year. Some of you have inquired as to why we don't offer a session in September, and the reason is that we understand that most of you are occupied with year-end requirements and do not have time for the training. So in order to use everyone's time more efficiently, we forego the training in September. Now, regarding next year's schedule, we plan to cover a couple new topics as well as provide new guidance on other areas that have been presented in the past. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Please keep an eye out for our FY20 program schedule, which will begin on October 2nd of 2019. The email invitation for this session will be sent out in a couple weeks, or a couple weeks before that session. On to slide 7. I'm sure many of you will want to receive credit for today's training, so you'll be glad to know that today's session is worth 1 CLP. On the following slide, which is slide 8, you'll find the training certificate, and I will go over the instructions at that time. And so several of you may have received this information for the training from a friend or colleague, but if you want to receive an email directly from us notifying you of the upcoming First Wednesday webinar events, please send us an email at SBA Learning, so that's SBALEARNING@SBA.gov. In the subject line, please enter the words Add to List, and we'll ensure you're added to the distribution list. On to slide 8, you'll see the certificate. Now, this is where we typically have you fill in your name for the training certificate. However, due to the size of the file for the training that we sent out, it was a PDF. So this is a PowerPoint. So first you'll need to access the separate PowerPoint slide that was attached to the SBA email invitation you received for today's session. And once you open the certificate, you'll manually fill in your name where it states insert your name here. And next you will either print or save that certificate. So once this is done, you can coordinate the CLP achievement through your training program. Please note that SBA does not track your CLPs or communicate with your training program coordinator regarding your CLP achievements. On to slide 9. Today's training has been assembled to address the All Small Mentor-Protege program, as well as provide you with additional resources available for your use. Our speaker has graciously accepted our invitation, and she'll be directing me to continue on to the next slide. As mentioned earlier, if you are unable to access WebEx, please follow along with the PowerPoint presentation that was included in the email for today's training. We will identify the page number so you can follow along. Also, please note that some viewers may experience a delay as the slide changes on your screen. Now, I am pleased to introduce today's speaker to you, Ms. Lori Gillen, who is the Director of SBA's All Small Mentor-Protege program. We appreciate that you could meet with us today, Lori, and I'll turn the program over to you now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris, for that introduction and for including us again in your First Wednesday lineup. We know that even though we're last, we're definitely not least, so we appreciate the sentiment. I'm delighted to be here today with our small but mighty All Small Mentor-Protege program team. So they will be delivering parts of this presentation as we go along, and I will introduce them as they step up. We have a lot to cover, and for some of the folks who are already familiar with the All Small Mentor-Protege program, some of it may feel a little redundant, but we appreciate your patience as we want to make sure that we're communicating information that allows everyone to be on the same page with respect to the program. So we're going to tag team on the presentation so that you can hear from everyone on our team who is here today. We have 3 primary components of the presentation, as you can see from, we're now going to move to slide 11, I believe it is. Yeah. We have 3 primary components of the presentation, a little bit about a background on the program. Then we have some information about eligibility and the application and continuing eligibility process. And then finally, we're going to talk about some resources. And as part of that, we're really going to touch on a little bit about JVs because we know how important that is for folks to understand. So as we move on to slide 12, As part of the background, we will represent a quick history of the program, and then we'll also focus on the benefits of the program, benefits for both proteges, mentors, and for federal agencies. Slide 13. Actually move right on to the next slide, 14. So, as many of you are aware, the concept of mentor-protege programs is not new to the federal government or to SBA. A handful of federal agencies had established mentor-protege programs in the past, the most visible of which is probably, best known probably would be DOD's. In 1998, the 8A program initiated a mentor-protege program to help boost the experience of 8A firms in competing for federal contracts. And the 8A mentor-protege program currently has more than 340 mentor-protege agreements in place. Next slide, number 15. So following the success of the 8A Mentor-Protege program, SBA was presented with a challenge to expand the 8A Mentor-Protege program to include all small businesses. Two acts of Congress, the Jobs Act of 2010 and the NDAA of 2013, provided the opportunity and the authority for SBA to create a Mentor-Protege program that included all small businesses. These laws also required SBA to oversee and help consolidate the other mentor-protege programs across the federal landscape in an effort to reduce duplication of effort and customer confusion. Next slide, 16. A working group was established to define the parameters of the new program, and in 2016, the All Small Mentor-Protege program was officially launched and accepted its first applications. ASMPP also required any federal agency with a Mentor-Protege program in place, excluding DOD, to request continuation of their program or voluntarily retire their program. 6 agencies have been approved to continue their mentor-protege program, and we'll touch on that a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, 17. So the overarching mission of the All Small Mentor-Protege program is to help firms gain experience accessing and winning federal contracts by allowing them to establish formal partnership with experienced firms and bid on contracts through JVs they can form together that are offered an exclusion from affiliation. Sounds like a mouthful, and we'll break it down a little as we move along in the presentation. What's important to know is that we're helping small firms to crack the proverbial chicken and egg dilemma that they face in doing business with the federal government, which is how can a small firm gain experience working on a federal contract when contracting officials require firms to demonstrate prior experience working on a federal contract before they will give them serious consideration. By partnering with experienced mentors, proteges not only learn the ropes of government contracting, but they're able to gain experience working on a federal contract. Therefore, we measure the success of the program by examining the amount and number of contracts that protege firms win independently of their mentor. So I'm going to turn, if we can move on to the next slide, 18, I'm going to turn this part over to Derek Brown, who's one of our senior business analysts, and he's been with the program since its inception in 2016, and he is going to walk through the benefits of who benefits from the program. Derek?
Good afternoon. As you can, next slide. As you can see from this slide, there are 3 primary beneficiaries of the All Small Mentor-Protege program: mentors, proteges, and federal agencies. The benefits to mentors include strengthening their supply chain. It is a smart business strategy to develop relationships with firms that complement or support your mission. This program encourages mentors to enter into a more formal partnership with smaller, less experienced enterprises in an effort to build a long-term and lasting relationship. Mentors also benefit by being able to form a joint venture with their protege and bid on contracts that are set aside or reserved for small businesses without tripping over affiliation issues that would normally prevent a joint venture from qualifying for these set-asides. More on the topic of JVs and exclusion from affiliation will come later. Next slide. ASMPP helps agencies to meet their scorecard goals by providing a larger pool of capable small businesses. Agencies may be more likely to designate even a large contract for small businesses, knowing that there are multiple mentor-protege joint ventures that could compete for the award. Bringing the heft of an experienced mentor to the table helps to negate concerns that contracting officers have with awarding contracts to less experienced small businesses. And the partnerships with the experienced mentors usually means that the protege is better prepared for the contract, which makes the transition smoother. For example, a mentor might have already helped a protege develop the proper accounting system and obtain a security clearance, which allows the JV to hit the ground running. Next slide. Last but not least, of course, are the benefits to proteges who gain business development assistance, which is critical to their success in government contracting. In addition, proteges also benefit by receiving subcontracts from their mentor. Finally, performance on joint venture means that the protege finally has the experience working on a federal contract that will allow them to win awards independent of their mentor. Next slide. Protege benefits. We would like to give you a greater sense of the benefits that accrue to protege firms. Next slide.
Slide 23.
Yes. As we mentioned earlier, proteges receive guidance from their mentor. Next slide. There are 6 areas of business development support that proteges may receive from their mentor. Support is provided almost evenly across 5 of the 6 areas, with international trade assistance being the least popular area of assistance. Examples of assistance that we regularly see include establishing stronger accounting systems and internal controls, recruiting and retaining personnel, developing HR systems, sponsoring security clearances, learning how to write proposals and look for opportunities, equity infusions, and loans to provide working capital. Next slide. The second area of support for proteges is subcontracting opportunities that are provided by the mentor. Next slide. And finally, mentors help proteges to create joint ventures and bid on government contracts together. Next slide. So what is the result of all of this assistance? Next slide. Proteges expand their capacity to bid and win contracts independent of their mentor. And the next slide.
We're on to slide 29.
Yes. The next, as you can see, it appears to be working. Our most recent outcomes data shows that proteges have won 55% of independent bids, which is up from 33% in fiscal year 18. Next slide.
So we're on slide 30, and we're going to pass the phone over to Latrice Andrews, who is also a senior business analyst here in the All Small Mentor-Protege program, who has been with us from the beginning of the program. Latrice, you want to talk about the eligibility and application process?
Good evening, everyone. Latrice Andrews. So who qualifies to participate in the program? To be eligible, you must be agricultural cooperative. Both the mentor and the protege must be for profit, with no findings of affiliation between the two. In other words, the protege firm does not have a formal relationship with the mentor or vice versa. What are areas of affiliation that will raise concerns? Protege is really an employee of the mentor. Is the mentor controlling ownership, interest in the protege? Also, family relationships may be another trigger to SBA that some form of affiliation exists. The protege must be small for their NAICS code and cannot have more than 2 mentors in a lifetime. I'm going to backtrack. When applying for the program, you must be small within the NAICS code. The NAICS code also must be your primary NAICS code. If you're not applying in your primary NAICS code and you opt to apply in your secondary NAICS code, you must provide proof that you've done work in that area of business. A protege may not have no more than 2 mentors in a lifetime. So we encourage you to shop wisely for your mentor because once you're in the program and you have 2 approved, be it 8A or be it all small, at this time the protege is no longer able to apply with another mentor. Mentors, on the other hand, can have 3 at any one time. The mentor also may not own more than 40% equity in the protege's firm. Next slide. If the mentor and protege meet those basic qualifications, they are now ready to start the application process. Next slide.
Slide 34.
Yes, sir. Okay, so the All Small Mentor Protege program will not select a mentor for you. So your first step is to select your mentor. Once you select your mentor, both you and the mentor must be registered in SAM. Both you and your mentor must take an online tutorial, which will generate a certificate for you. Once you've done all that, you can go into certified.gov and start the application process. You will upload your signed NPA agreement. The protege must submit a required business plan. If you or your mentor have other additional approved NPA agreements, whether it's with SBA or any other agency that has a formal NPA agreement or program, you must provide a copy of those. And as I mentioned earlier, you must provide proof of experience in a secondary NAICS if that's how, if that's the NAICS code that you're applying under. How long does it take for us to make a determination? Once we receive a completed case, our turnaround times are less than 90 days, but we do suggest that firms plan for a 90-day turnaround because we do have ebbs and flows in our application. Next slide. If you are an 8A participant and you have an approved 8A MPA agreement, you are eligible to transfer that agreement into the All Small Mentor Protege program if you choose to. Here are the steps that you must follow. 8A firms can apply. They must fill out the addendum. We will provide you with an addendum to fill out, transferring your 8A MPA into the All Small MPA. The 8A MPAs are governed under 124.520. This addendum will state that you are now governed under 125.9, which is the All Small Mentor Protege program. We will also ask for you to upload the existing approved 8A MPA agreement also the approval letter, and your most recent annual review letter. Once that's done, you can upload that also into certify.gov. You do not have to do this through your local district office. You can do it straight through Certify. As an 8A participant, you can either apply for the 8A MPA relationship, or you can apply for the All Small Mentor-Protege program. Next slide. Since the All Small Mentor-Protege program began in 2016, currently we have 935 approved MPA agreements, which makes All Small the single largest Mentor-Protege program in the federal government at this time. Next slide. What are the characteristics of these 935 proteges? These are 3 charts to provide a quick snapshot. The chart on the left illustrates the major NAICS codes, with construction and engineering leading the way. But as you can see, the program is gaining traction among other industries areas as well. The chart on the top right lists the top 10 SBA district offices for MPAs. No surprise, the D.C. corridor for Baltimore through Richmond make up the majority of MPAs. However, it is good to see the program growing in other areas with a strong federal government presence. The chart on the bottom right demonstrates that our proteges represent a wide cross-section of socioeconomic categories, with 8A and SDBOSB firms leading the pack. Next slide.
Thanks, Latrice. So we're now going to turn the phone over to the presentation over to Tracy Ed Murphy, who will discuss the requirements for proteges to maintain eligibility in the program.
Good afternoon. Let's walk through slide number 39. Proteges must submit annual reports, demonstrate material developmental benefits, and submit quarterly financial reports and certificates of compliance for joint ventures. Mentors must provide meaningful assistance as described in the MPA agreement. Next slide, please. SBA reserves the right to terminate the agreement for noncompliance if the mentor hasn't provided proper assistance, or if they have not renewed the agreement for an additional 3 years upon expiration after the initial 3 years. Next slide, please. There are a few short resources that we want to bring to your attention that may be of assistance to you. Next slide. First, we will explore some information about joint ventures and then provide a list of our guiding regulations. Next slide, please. Joint ventures. ASMPP joint ventures are eligible to joint venture as a small business and assume the identity of the protege for any federal government prime, contract, or subcontract. The ASMPP joint ventures are granted exclusion from affiliation. Procuring activities must consider work done independently by each partner to the joint venture, as well as any work done by the joint venture itself. MPA approval required prior to joint venture bid on award. ASMPP does not review or approve joint ventures. SBA district offices review and approve all JVs for 8A contracts, regardless of whether the MPA was approved via the 8A or ASMPP programs. The ability to form joint ventures with exclusion from affiliation is an aspect of our program that we would consider the cherry on the sundae. However, proteges must follow the rules and regulations regarding joint venture in order to be compliant. Let's walk through this slide together. Next slide, please. This slide is for your reference to identify the regulations that govern these various topics. The All Small Mentor-Protege Program, the regulations of 13 CFR 125.9. SBA size regulations, 13 CFR 121. The Hub Zone Program, 13 CFR 126.6. SBA Certificate of Competency, 13 CFR 125.5. SBA Prime Contracting, 13 CFR 125.2. Non-Manufacturer Rule, 13 CFR 121.406B. Service Disabled Veterans, 13 CFR 125.15B. 8A and SDB Regulations, 13 CFR 124.5. Small Disadvantaged Business, 13 CFR 124.1002F. WOSB Program, 13 CFR 127. SBA Subcontracting, 13 CFR 125.3. Limitations on Subcontracting, 13 CFR 125.6. Next slide, please. As we mentioned earlier, there are 6 other federal mentor-protege programs listed on the next slide. Next slide, please. These mentor-protege programs have unique features that differentiate them from the All Small Mentor-Protege program, but mostly they all focus on strengthening the subcontracting relationship between mentors and proteges. Those programs are the Department of Defense, the Federal Aviation Administration, NASA, Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Department of Energy. Next slide, please. ASMPP relies on our district offices and our resource partners to inform and assist protege firms. Next slide, please. This slide provides links to the major resources available to help protege firms navigate the All Small Mentor-Protege program and government contracting generally. SBA Learning Center, SBA Resource Partners and District Offices, and the All Small Mentor-Protege team. We will turn the program back to Lori for a wrap-up.
Great, thanks, Tracy. So if we can move to slide 49. This is our last slide, and it's one of our favorites. We've saved the best for last. We regularly monitor the outcomes of our proteges to ask ourselves the question of how does this program make a difference? Are we making any difference? And so this slide demonstrates that proteges are in fact benefiting from the All Small Mentor-Protege program. So I hope you can indulge us as we brag a little bit about some of the results of the first 2 approved cohorts. And these numbers here, these outcome numbers that we're going to walk through, are really based on information that annual reports that have been provided by, we're going to say roughly 400 proteges. So as you can see, together the proteges have received over 250,000 hours of support from mentors, which is a significant number of hours of support if you think about that being provided by mentors free of charge. Proteges have added 2,700 FTEs that they attribute are the result of the participation in the All Small Mentor-Protege program. We ask them to make sure they attribute those numbers to us. They also report having received $129 million in subcontracts from their mentors, which is an impressive number. They have formed 390 JVs, and we had mentioned earlier about 55% of independent bids that have been offered have been won by protege firms. So we're really excited about these outcomes and believe that they're showing quite a promise about the program. So nothing speaks more strongly, though, than a good success story, and we are in the process of gathering some success stories, but I did want to share a synthesis of one success story that we believe is the biggest contract to date awarded to an all-small Mentor-Protege JV team. So I'm going to really summarize this briefly because I don't want to get into too much of the details, but a DOD buying activity had a large contract that was set aside for a small business years ago. When the contract was up for renewal, the buying activity was concerned that they wouldn't be able to find a qualified small business with capacity and experience to undertake this large contract, as the existing firm had sized out as being a small firm. But when the contracting officials learned about the all-small Mentor-Protege program, they had a hunch that there would be a sufficient number of Mentor-Protege partners that would meet the requirements. So they set it aside as an SDVOSB, and sure enough, there were more than a few Mentor-Protege teams that bid on the contract, and one of them won the $360 million award. So the agency was delighted that they were able to maintain this as a small business set-aside and have told us that but for the all-small Mentor-Protege program, they probably would not have been able to do that. So we think that says a lot about the program and how contracting officials are utilizing it and recognizing the power of the program. So we are going to wrap up here because we'd like to make sure we leave a lot of room for questions, which I imagine that you guys have. We do have Sam Lee, who is with us today, and Sam is our attorney advisor and guru on all things joint venture and FAR related. So if you have any questions, we may ask Sam to go ahead and answer those. So I'm going to turn it back to the moderator to help us with the question period.
Okay, Gwen, I believe we have a couple questions out there. If you're interested in the audience, if you're interested in having additional questions asked, please put those in the chat box in your bottom right-hand corner. Otherwise, Gwen, we'll start with the first question.
Okay, first question is the mentor required to subcontract to the protege, and who tracks that?
The mentor is not required to subcontract with the protege, and so we don't track that necessarily. So, but they're not required. We hope they will, but we don't require it.
Okay, this one is an actual situation. If a small business, for example, woman-owned or hub-owned joint venture with a large business, pursue a contract. For another example, construction to meet high bonding requirement, estimated at $80 million. After completion of that project, will that small business firm no longer be considered a small business due to the size under the NAICS which they've previously performed as an all-small Mentor-Protege?
This is Sam Lee from the SBA's General Counsel's Office. It's a bit hard to theorize on that. You know, the way we calculate size is we average the last 3 years of the firm's receipts, but we don't take partial years in that. We have a proposed rule out right now to extend that period to 5 years. The size standard for construction is fairly high. It's almost $40 million. And in fact, the size standards are going up next week on 19th. So it really makes a difference in that scenario exactly how much the firm is making, how much is being passed through to the firm's tax returns. For more detail about that, the joint venture is split. The ownership of the joint venture is split between the joint venture participants. So it would be, in that case, the small business and the large business. So not all of the joint venture's revenue would be attributable to the small business. So it would only be the percentage that is attributable through the joint venture agreement to the small business. But for that sort of scenario, it's very important how much money is actually going through to the small business, what the size.
Okay, next question. Online, slide 40, it states the program duration is 3 years with 3 options. The Mentor-Protege agreement from DOE is 2 years with 3 options. Is that correct?
Ours is 3 years with the ability to extend for an additional 3 years. I don't know what DOE is offhand, so it's a separate program. So we're not familiar with it right here. We don't have the information right here at our fingertips.
How is the partnership registered in SAM?
The joint venture can register in SAM. It has to be registered in SAM. I think there are different options when you go into SAM to designate yourself as a joint venture.
Okay. How does the procuring activity evaluate past performance and technical capability of a new joint venture?
The procuring activity should take into account the past performance and the capabilities of each joint venture partner. That's a requirement from SBA's regulations and from the statute. So you wouldn't just look at the joint venture entity by itself. Like the question indicated, the new joint venture is not going to have past performance. It's probably not going to have capability as a new joint venture, but realistically, that joint venture is a partnership of multiple firms, Mentor and Protege, so the agency should look at the capabilities and the past performance of those partners.
Okay, next question is, can the mentor be a large business?
Yes. Yes. We would say most of them are.
Okay, and how are the mentor-protege arrangements monitored to ensure they are not a disguise for a pass-through contract? For example, awarded to small business but large business doing most of the work.
We require anybody in a joint venture to submit their financials for that joint venture on a quarterly basis. And we review the performance of the Mentor-Protege agreement every year as part of the annual report review. And in that annual report, we do ask questions about the percentage of work that has been distributed for each joint venture that has been formed. And so we do look at that, and we do follow up with questions, and we do try our best to ascertain and ensure that the proteges are performing on the contracts as they should be. Hope that answers that question.
Next question is, does the JV require their own DUNS number?
Yes.
Okay. And may joint ventures consist of multiple enterprises?
Outside of the Mentor-Protege program, they can consist of more than 2. So in the Mentor-Protege program, you just have 2. You have the mentor, you have the protege. But you can have joint ventures that have more than 2, and we've seen some with 3 or 4. If you're outside of the Mentor-Protege program, then you would not have, at least for small business set-aside, you wouldn't have large businesses participating.
Okay. How does the All Small Mentor-Protege program affect the subcontracting limitations? For instance, if the JV is considered 8A, can the JV subcontract to another 8A company more than the subcontracting threshold for the contract NAICS code?
The limitation of subcontracting apply to the joint venture as the awardee. So, for example, in a services contract, which has a 50% limitation on subcontracting, the joint venture has to perform 50% of the work itself. And then the joint venture can subcontract 50% to small business or non-8A business in that example. That means that the participants of the joint venture comply with that 50% requirement. So the mentor might do, 30%, so the protege could do 20%, and that would be enough because that adds up to 50. Additionally, under the limitations on subcontracting change that we made in 2016, the firms can also use similarly situated subcontractors to perform their required work. So a similarly situated entity is a firm that's in the same category as the set-aside. On an 8A contract, that would be another 8A firm. So theoretically, the joint venture that wins the 8A contract could subcontract to another 8A, and whatever work the subcontractor would count toward the joint venture's required.
I think you answered the next two questions with that answer, Sam.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So those last two questions were also about limitations on subcontracting, and Sam just answered those. Those were the last two questions that we had.
Okay. We will keep the line open for, let's see here.
If I can, we'd be interested in receiving any feedback from the folks on the call, generally or separately, for any tips you have for us. How familiar do you think contracting officials and agencies really are with the program? How can we reach more of them? What are you hearing about the program that seems to be an obstacle that people might be facing? Where do you see our biggest challenges? How can we help you and others to utilize and advocate for the program within federal agencies? So I don't know if anybody has any comments they'd like to share on that. We'd be happy to hear those.
So, Lori, question for you, too. So if they would like to direct any comments to you guys after the presentation, is there a good contact?
So, yes, that would be our all-small Mentor-Protege mailbox. That's all small MPP at SBA.gov. Or they're welcome to share any comments with me directly. That's Lori, Lori, .Gillen, Gillen, as in Nancy, Lori.Gillen at SBA.gov.
Okay, Lori, we did have one come in. I guess they're requesting more information on joint ventures permitted under GSA.
What's our joint?
Well, joint ventures can bid for GSA contracts. Generally, there shouldn't be any limitation on joint ventures bidding or submitting offers on any sort of set-aside or any sort of program. The joint venture should be allowed to submit bids or offers, as long as they comply with our program requirements and they have a compliant joint venture agreement. There's no limitation on joint venture bidding.
Okay. Gwen, did you see a couple additional questions come in?
Sorry, I was muted. How soon may we expect SBA to publish more guidance and regulations on limitations on subcontracting, including asking for a subcontracting plan for set-asides?
We do have some slight revisions to the limitations on subcontracting that we proposed at the end of 2018, and we received comments on those. Those changes should be out probably in the next 120 days. There's a 90-day waiting period at OMB, so to give it some extra 20 days is from now, but probably January or so, there should be a final rule that makes some slight changes to the limitation on subcontracting and to the subcontracting program.
Okay, and one more question for the All Small Mentor-Protege program. If the JV is seeking hub zone status, will the JV entity have to meet the hub zone requirement, or will it just be the protege?
Just the protege, right?
It's just the protege would have to meet it, not the JV itself. The certification would be based off of the protege.
Okay, I think that's about it. There were a couple of GSA. There's one about applying GSA Evergreen Awards with a 6-year max agreement, but I'm not sure. The question wasn't clear as to how that pertains to the All Small program.
Okay, and I was looking at the questions as well. If there are any additional questions that were not addressed during today's presentation, feel free to reach out to Lori or her team, or you can contact us at SBA Learning, the email address for that as well. Like we mentioned earlier, I want to thank each and every one of you for making our FY19 program a success. And as mentioned earlier, we will not have a program in September. So keep an eye out for our FY20 program schedule, which will begin on October 2nd. And that email invitation for the session will be sent out a couple weeks before the session, so please take a look at that. Once again, I want to thank Lori and her team for the great presentation, and for all the attendees as well. Thank you for your continued support of our program, and we look forward to seeing you in FY20. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced. You may now disconnect.